Well, welcome to this explainer of our fallen cosmos. I invite you to gather close, though I have to warn you, the text we're examining today offers very little warmth. As I've pored over the source materials detailing this grimdark fable, I confess I feel the profound weariness of a theologian who's been staring just a bit too long into the dark. We aren't looking at a history of triumphant battles or simple morality tales today. No, we're exploring a profound and, quite frankly, chilling architecture of the soul's decay, as described in our text, a descent orchestrated by unseen, spectral forces. So let's begin our descent into the abyss.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the source material immediately establishes the incredibly grim stakes of our narrative. We're being pulled directly into a universe plagued not by tangible, sword-wielding fiends, but by a suffocating spiritual decay. Just think about those words for a second. Merely a cyclical repetition of vanity. The source material wants us to understand that the true threat to humanity isn't some sudden explosive destruction. It's the quiet, paralyzing whisper that getting up in the morning, loving your neighbor, striving for a better world, that absolutely all of it is entirely pointless.
Section I, The Fallen Cosmos, Beyond Physical Rot. And this brilliantly illustrates the source material's stark distinction between mere physical death and the far more terrifying erosion of the soul. We're exploring a threat far more insidious than the typical monsters of myth or literal fire and brimstone. You see, physical destruction is characterized as mere physical rot, a visible cessation of function, or the fiery caricatures of malice we so often associate with demonic forces. It's finite, it ends. But then, there's spiritual fatigue. This is deliberate, calculated spiritual erosion. It's a paralyzing loss of purpose. Physical destruction ends a life, sure, but spiritual fatigue does something infinitely worse. It turns the infinite nature of the soul into an unbearable burden.
Section 2. The Architects of the Abyss, Fallen Seraphs.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the source text dissects the way unseen entities use philosophy to convince the soul that human effort is futile. The text explicitly frames this through a Nietzschean lens. This isn't just everyday pessimism, folks. It defines their weapon as nihilism, specifically the paralyzing belief in the eternal recurrence of all meaninglessness. Imagine being convinced not just that your current suffering has no point, but that existence itself is a closed loop of groundless suffering playing out forever and ever. That is the architecture of the abyss.
So, who exactly are these architects? Well, the text describes them as fallen seraphs. These are angels of the highest order who have completely lost their own transcendent purpose. Having plummeted from the grace of divine meaning, they don't seek to physically torture us. Rather, they act as meticulous architects, constructing a sprawling abyss of aimlessness for humanity. They are whispers of this eternal recurrence. Their ultimate goal is to make us mirror their own devastating loss of transcendence. Misery, in this cosmic sense, truly demands company.
Section 3. The Mechanics of Despair, the Science of Meaninglessness.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the cold, calculated methodology these entities use to trap us. These fallen seraphs don't just rely on vague philosophical whispers. The source material explains how the architects literally weaponize the foundational physics equation, E equals mc squared, to argue that the universe is a completely closed system. They twist the conservation of energy to whisper a theological lie, that if the universe is a closed loop of energy and mass, absolutely nothing can enter from the outside. No divine grace, no redemption, no transcendent judge. By framing the cosmos as a strictly material, sealed vault, they attempt to scientifically prove that we are utterly alone in the dark.
This leads us to the grim sequence of how they actually break a human being. The text outlines this process of decay in 3 devastating steps. First, the erosion of the soul. The agonizing weight of a meaningless eternity without redemption begins to slowly, deliberately grind the human will to dust. Second, the loss of transcendence. The individual forgets the sky, forgets the possibility of a higher purpose entirely, perfectly mirroring the fallen seraphs themselves. And finally, step 3, relentless suffering. With meaning completely eradicated, the soul is left to wallow in a despair that is relentless precisely because it is groundless.
Section IV, The Ultimate Absurdity. 2 Views of the Cross.
Prepare yourselves, because we've reached the climax of our dark sermon here. The source text presents a profound theological collision regarding the central Christian symbol of hope. On one side, the faithful perspective views the cross as the ultimate triumph of sacrificial love and a definitive victory over death. It's the anchor of meaning. But the text impartially explains how the abyss attempts to completely invert this. From the demonic perspective, the cross is the ultimate absurdity. It's an illusion. The architects of the abyss look at the ultimate act of divine love and see only a cosmic joke, a totally futile gesture within their closed system of despair.
And the text distills that demonic perspective into this incredibly haunting phrase. They view Christ merely as a failed Übermensch who died for a lie, a supposed Superman whose sacrifice changed absolutely nothing in the cold mechanics of the universe. It's a chilling interpretation, deliberately designed by these entities to strip away the very concept of redemption, leaving humanity isolated, vulnerable, and wallowing in that groundless suffering we talked about.
Section V. Escaping the meaningless loop. A warning to the damned.
So, the crucial point is this. If you've followed this grimdark fable thus far, you must feel the sheer gravity of this text. As a weary reader of these signs, I have to deliver a passionate warning to you now. Escaping this groundless loop requires a monumental, sheer force of spiritual will. You have to recognize the trap for exactly what it is. The true trap orchestrated by these fallen seraphs isn't death. It's being convinced that your suffering is eternal and entirely without purpose. Spiritual fatigue is not the end of life. It's the tragic, silent loss of the meaning of life. It is surrendering to the whisper that your existence is just a closed equation in an empty void.
Which leaves us staring directly into the abyss, confronting the very question the source material forces upon us. When the fallen seraphs whisper that your efforts are futile, that love is an absurdity, and that you're forever trapped in a closed system of despair, will you succumb to the eternal recurrence of vanity, or will you defy the architects of the abyss and lay claim to your transcendent purpose? The text leaves the choice up to you. Thank you for joining me for this explainer.